Legislature will now resume. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, final reading, Legislative Bill 138. First of all, I have a series of motions. Senator Hunt would withdraw MO 320. Senator Slama withdraw MO 1096, 1097, 1098, 1099, 1100, 1101, 1102. Mr. President, next item on the bill, Senator Hansen would move to return the bill to select file for a specific amendment, that being AM 1975.
Senator Hansen, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've communicated with many of my colleagues on the floor already about what my intent is here with LB 138. And I first want to thank Senator Bosden for giving me the go-ahead to at least allow me to attempt to put AM 1975 onto her bill as a vehicle. As many of you know, AM 1975 is my priority bill for the year, LB 91, what is otherwise known as the helmet law. Many of you are also very familiar with this law. Thanks to Senator Wayne, I got to update everybody a little bit earlier on the helmet law and what it entails, but I'd like to do that again if I could real quick. The helmet law is, according to the LB 91, which is my bill, anybody above the age of 21 will now have the option to wear a helmet while riding a motorcycle, or not, or wear a helmet or not wear a helmet. Residents must have completed a safety course and have submitted proof of completion of the course to the DMV. Proof shall be in a manner approved by the DMV. Current riders who have taken the course previously would have to present the certificate of completion to the DMV in order to get it added on the record. So people who have previously taken this course, and this is a course that is done throughout the whole state of Nebraska. Anybody who's been to a Harley-Davidson store or the like might have seen some of their parking lots with cones out there and people driving around motorcycles. Those are the safety classes they do. This teaches them defensive driving, which is where the majority of accidents on people with motorcycles come from. Is learning defensive driving is one of the best ways to prevent an accident. And that's what they teach here with this. And this was actually one of the things that was recommended by a lot of the motorcycle riders in the state of Nebraska, is what they can do to ensure that they're doing their part when it comes to safety. The DMV also shall modify their system by January 2024 to be able to add the date of completion of the course on the person's record. And also eye protection is required. And if eye protection is not available, they can also use a protective face shield attached to a protective helmet, or a windshield on a motorcycle or a moped that protects the operator and passenger's horizontal line of vision in all operating positions. And like I mentioned before, most states, and we're becoming one of the few that has a complete helmet law. Most of them are about 20 years or younger. A lot of them are 17 years and younger. And so it's usually about 17 years or 20 years, and by the look of it, most of them are 17 years. And they have no other stipulations. This bill is different. We want to make it more conservative in nature, so we can make sure that we are doing our extra due diligence to protect those people as best we can, but also give them the freedom, the liberty to choose to wear a helmet or not. I appreciate Senator Boer working with me on this bill. She did help craft some of the language with me when it came to enforcement of the law. And so we drafted up some language that's very similar to the seatbelt offense when somebody is caught not wearing a helmet when they should be, if they haven't taken the class. So those are the bullet points of the helmet law version. It's not too complicated. That's the majority of what this bill entails. Again, we literally are one of the very few states now, and I can hand this out, every state around us, almost within 2 states around us, is about 20 or 17 years and younger with no other stipulations. And we're seeing more and more states move towards bills such as this, and none are going the opposite way. So I know usually one of the arguments is that we're going to see more fatalities. There's going to be other insurance issues with insurance, but that is just not the case, and the data does not point that out. If that was the case, we start seeing states go the opposite way. So with that, I would appreciate your green vote on AM 1975 and allow it to be attached to LB 138, and I'll do my best to answer anybody's questions. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Senator Bostoman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Nebraska. I just want to put some context on this amendment. I do stand opposed to the return to select file. I served on the Transportation Telecommunication Committee now for 7 years. This bill, or parts of this bill, has been in front of our committee for that time. And we have heard testimony from a large number of people in opposition to this. The bill this time, some of the opposition was National Safety Council of Nebraska, Nebraska Medical Association, Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association, Nebraska Fire Chiefs Association, CHI Health, Nebraska Emergency Nurses Association, Creighton University Medical Center, Bergen Mercy Trauma Department, Nebraska Safety Council, Nebraska Insurance Federation, Nebraska Nurses Association, Madonna Rehabilitation Hospitals, Nebraska Hospital Association, Joshua Wilderman, Gary Hausman, Dr. Scott Adams, Nebraska Association of Trial Attorneys. Our EMS folks come in, emergency room folks come in, Madonna, as I said, many nurses, writers themselves and family members of writers. I just want to put on the record or let folks know that there has been a significant amount of opposition to the bill as it's come across. I believe it come out maybe 6-2 with this amendment coming out. It did not come out before. Things that we heard from family, from those who were lost legs, that can't walk, those type of things that were in motorcycle accidents with helmets on, came in and testified in opposition to the bill. I appreciate what Senator Hansen is trying to improve upon the bill, but I would still stand opposed to the bill on the return to select file because it is an issue that we've had, although this year we probably didn't have the riders or the family members come in as much. The abate folks come in, and I appreciate the abate folks coming in. And the testimony that they provided and how they provided it, they did a good job doing that. And part of the thing during the hearing too, I want to make sure we had both sides represented and understood, and for questions that we're asking, I think I tried to do that, and we did that in the hearing. But one thing to consider is states, once they pass a law removing helmets, the number of deaths and significant injuries goes up. So those are just things to consider as we look. I just wanted to put on the record and let folks know that when these bills, we've had these for a number of years, where the opposition is for this. Our medical facilities, our doctors, those who work with the patients, those who see the folks and treat the folks both at the accident scene and when they get in the emergency room and then long-term care are involved with that. Not everybody, and there's some really good riders out there. And a lot of times it's not the rider's fault. It's a guy, gal, person that's in the car that causes the accident. So it's one of those things I think we just need to think about and consider on it. I know there's support in the body for that. And part of the argument was, well, it's a big helmet and that. Well, the size of helmets, as long as they're approved, are different sizes, and I don't know that really comes into play. But I do respect Senator Hansen and the BATE folks that come in that testified on this and want this change and want this amendment. But I would still want to echo what we've heard over the years from those who are riders that have been injured, their family members who have lost riders, as well as those who care for the individuals and the rehabilitation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostoman. Senator Erdman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. Senator Hansen, I appreciate your stick-to-itness to bring this bill again. I appreciate it a lot. We have heard for the last 7 years all of those things that Senator Bosselman just spoke of, and all the opposition and all the reasons why. But when you really look at the statistics of the other states who don't have the helmet law, it's no different than ours. Those people who are what they call in the nursing home because of brain damage or whatever, all those things, they use that information to try to tell us that when you take away the helmets, everybody's going to wind up in the hospital. What this is about is freedom. And Senator McDonald has a saying is, let those who ride decide, okay? It's about freedom. So where I live, in my district, we have people that avoid our state, the Panhandle, because we have a helmet law. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I delivered sweet corn to Torrington, Wyoming. After delivering the sweet corn, I needed to get some gas. I pulled into the co-op in Torrington. There were 40 motorcycles gassing up. So I visited with them where they were from, where they were going. I knew where they were going to Sturgis. And I said, there's a closer route. There's a shorter route that you could have taken to get to Sturgis instead of going through Wyoming. And they said, yeah, we would do that, but they have a helmet law in Nebraska, and we're not doing that. So we talk about economic development and tourism all the time here and promoting Nebraska, but you have to remember Nebraska is not for everybody, and especially those people who ride motorcycles that don't want to wear a helmet. And so we have fought this fight for 7 years, Senator Brewer, very similar to your constitutional carry. And eventually you should get over the hump. Eventually people should start understanding the real numbers and stop listening to those paid lobbyists that come in and lobby against bills. This is about freedom. So if you like freedom and you think others should have the freedom to do as they wish, then you need to vote for Senator Hansen's bill. I am in strong support of returning this bill from final reading to select for the amendment. I am in strong support of AM 1975. It is the right thing to do. We've been doing this for a long time. It's the right thing to do to help with tourism in the state of Nebraska because there are thousands and thousands of motorcycles that go around the state, that could go through the state and spend money here. And I live on one of those highways that leads to Sturgis. And when it gets to be the first part of August, I think most of them drive by my house. At least those who wear helmets. So it's a chance for us to give freedom to others and let them decide. And so don't believe that all of a sudden all these people are going to be making insurance claims and are going to be in intensive care. All that information doesn't stack up with the facts. And I think Senator Hansen has some of those facts about what happens in other states that don't have the helmet law. So the testimony in opposition don't stack up with the numbers. So please return this bill to select and advance 1975. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Riepe, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to comment. I've dealt with the helmet law for a number of years. It's my 5th year here. My piece would be coming from a hospital administrator for nearly 40 years, young guy like me. And I can tell you that I personally visited intensive care units where a number of bikers have been there. They were on the road to a Madonna place, and they were probably going to cost, because most of them would result in being on Medicaid, so they would cost the Nebraska taxpayers millions of dollars before, they would be taken home. So that's a very concerning piece to me. I also think that it's a terrible example for kids to see the people out on motorcycles and all of a sudden they have to ride on their little bikes, but they have to have their helmets in place. I think if we pursue this piece, we should take a look to it. If it's a restriction of freedom, then we need to look at the freedom that we require children to be in car seats. Maybe that's something that we need to challenge. Maybe we need to challenge our own situation of having to wear safety belts ourselves. And if you really want to wrap it up, maybe the interstate between here and Omaha or here in Seward should become the America's answer to the German Autobahn. I think we have to have some responsibility, and too many of these people end up being at the expense of taxpayers. So I will be opposing the bill. I've shared that with Senator Hansen, my chairman, and we agree to disagree. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Riepe. Senator Blood, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand opposed to the return to select file. And I just want to make a statement. I do support the underlying bill for Senator Boson. You know, when I was growing up, my dad, every time he'd see a motorcycle, and my dad had his own motorcycle, and I have a scar on my leg from an accident we had on it to show you, not well on the floor, even though he loved his motorcycle, he had an Indian, and he still loves motorcycles. Every time he would see a motorcycle, he would say, kidney donor, organ donor. And I always thought that was kind of funny, but I always thought it was kind of a joke. But as I got older and I started crafting laws that pertain to things like that, I wanted to know if that was really true. And if you look at the stats, you'll see that organ donations resulting from fatal vehicle incidents increase by 20% when states repeal these laws. So I don't know, it's funny, we worry about certain freedoms, like it's okay to take away parental rights when we don't agree with something, but then now we're worried about freedom when it comes to a motorcycle helmet. So I guess we get to pick and choose. It's a long day, I can't talk. We get to pick and choose what freedoms we like and what we don't like. I personally, you know, if they want to be who they are and not wear helmets, that's up to them, but I'm not sure that I want them to be able to do it here in Nebraska. I want to protect those people. I'm sure organ donors would love to have more organs because we have a lot of people on waiting lists. I guess that's the upside. But we also know that when you have the helmet laws, you have 33% fewer head injuries than the states that don't have helmet laws. So I saw who went and opposed it. One of them was Rob Bell. I'm sure that affects our insurance rates as well. We know that when we do things that are going to cause our insurance costs to rise, that our insurance rates will also rise. I haven't looked that up yet, but I'm pretty sure and pretty confident that that's indeed what's going to happen. So it will cost people who need motorcycle insurance and probably our health care as well. Those rates will go up. So at this time, I stand opposed. I maybe just be not voting. Because I'm kind of torn. I really do feel if people want to do things that are going to hurt themselves, it's their bodies, their choice, their business. But I also know that there's going to be an overall cost to other Nebraskans if they are injured, especially long-term medical costs, and that falls on our shoulders. And having a son who had serious brain issues as a result of brain tumors, I can tell you that having to deal with people that have brain injuries for the family is a lot. So don't just think about the motorcycle riders, think about their families in case they're injured. And I know that that's not our problem, but if we're gonna make laws about it, it is our business. So with that, I would yield any time I have back to you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blood. Senator DeBoer, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has not been my favorite bill at any point in the last 5 years I was here because I see both sides. The first thing I want to say is to everyone in Nebraska, if you are a motorcycle rider, you should wear a helmet every single time. You are safer. You should wear a helmet every single time. That being said, I don't think it's our government position to tell people what they should do. I have been very consistent about that throughout this entire year. The government should not be involved in these personal decisions. So I support this bill, even though I know more people will die, which sucks, because we need people to wear their helmets. The helmets save lives. So I will support the bill because I don't think the government should be in the way of that decision. But I will also very strongly encourage everyone who's making that decision to wear a helmet every single time. When I first came back to Nebraska after practicing law in Kansas City, I worked part-time at a law firm doing some appellate work for them. And they did a lot of personal injury work. And I saw pictures of motorcycle accidents of people who did not wear helmets. And it was not pretty. So to every person in Nebraska who rides a motorcycle, please wear your helmet. At the same time, it is not our responsibility, nor is it our place as your government to make that kind of decision for you. We can strongly encourage it, as I am doing now, but that should be a decision that you make yourself. So I support this bill, reluctantly, worried that people in Nebraska won't wear helmets and will get injured as a result. But because the government should not be in this aspect of your life, I will support this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator DeBoer. Senator Mosier, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was one of the members who voted not to bring this out of committee. I understand the want to have the wind blow through your hair and ride your motorcycle without a helmet, but I've had two good friends who had accidents, and they both wore helmets, but nonetheless, one of them got sideswiped by a car changing lanes, and he crashed, and he was in the hospital and in a convalescent home for at least 3 months, I think maybe 6 months. And he's pretty much normal today. He can walk and think, and he survived. The other friend was wearing a helmet, but it was one of those little salad bowl helmets that you just kind of hold on with an elastic strand underneath your chin. And I think it was mostly just to look like a helmet. He was sitting waiting for a light to change, and some truck came up behind him and smashed him up against the car in front of him, right in the middle of town. And he was in the hospital 3 months, 6 months, I don't know, a long time. And he's never going to be right. He's never going to be 100%. So, I didn't want to be the one to repeal that and have somebody else have more serious problems than even that. Government tells us to wear seat belts. Government tells us to obey the speed limits. They tell us to obey stoplights. Government tells us what to do all the time. I'm not going to filibuster it. I just don't think it's a smart thing to do. I think the temptation to be wild and crazy is high, and even so, not everybody wears a helmet. I understand that, but I think we as legislators should encourage people to wear helmets by making it a requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mosier. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief here. I just want to rise in support of the motion to return to select file for the amendment. I am supportive of this bill because I think it has been well thought out. I think that, as was laid out by Senator Hansen, this is for people over 21. So let's be consistent here as we've talked. Well, I think a lot of us have talked for a long time about this. We're not dealing with minors here. We're dealing with people that are 21 who are able to make the decisions for themselves as to whether they want to wear the helmet. I think that's key. I think it's also, we need to recognize that riding a motorcycle by itself is dangerous. I don't ride myself, but I will tell you that I remember my younger years, I rode occasionally. Riding a motorcycle is dangerous and in its own right, but we don't require them to wear a seatbelt on a motorcycle. And if you look at many motorcycle accidents, it's not all head injuries. It's a lot of other injuries that occur when you're riding out in the open air like that down the interstate at that high speed and or you get hit. I think I would agree with Senator DeBoer that I would encourage anyone who's riding a helmet or riding a motorcycle to wear a helmet at all times. But that should be a personal choice, and I think we need to leave that to them. I also think that, as Senator Hansen laid out, there are significant economic development benefits here, and also, as Senator Erdman laid out, we lose a lot of traffic across western Nebraska and across the entire state of Nebraska, people riding to Sturgis that avoid the state of Nebraska. There are other states that are doing this. A lot of the other states are allowing this, and they're allowing it at much lower ages. I think we're being consistent that you need to be 21 years old to be able to do this. You need to wear eyewear, but let's face it, riding a motorcycle in itself has its own set of dangers, and I think that ought to be a personal choice. So I'm going to vote in favor of the return to select and also in favor of the underlying bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator, who's next? Oh, Brandt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Hansen and the TNT committee for voting this out. I represent a rural area. I hear a lot from my riders, and they want the option of not wearing a helmet. Most of them say when they're riding around our small towns and getting gas and just sort of putzing around town, they probably would not wear a helmet. But when they go down the highway or the interstate, they say they will wear a helmet because they see the danger in that. And I think they have the ability to distinguish the difference, between riding in their local areas where they feel pretty safe and then going out into other areas where they don't know what they're going to encounter. This bill explicitly says you need to be over 21, take an approved safety course in order to not wear a helmet. So there are conditions attached to it. And then I guess finally, as a farmer who rides an ATC myself, in the summer we ride it every day to irrigate or go after cattle. I do not wear a helmet. And I guess I feel others should have the same choices. I support LB 138 and AM 1975, and I encourage you to do also. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Senator Ibaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise today in support of AM 1975, Senator Hansen's bill. And I also rise as the aunt of two nephews who were both killed on motorcycles. They were both not wearing helmets. One was wearing a helmet, one was not. And do I support wearing a helmet? Absolutely. Please wear a helmet. Do I think we should mandate wearing helmets? In their memory, I say no. My friends at Abate 12 in Imperial last summer when I was campaigning kind of took me under their wing and we got acquainted. Salt of the earth people, as Senator Hansen would say. I absolutely adore them. So my vote will be for my friends at Abate 12 in Imperial. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ibaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that all of you who are supporting this amendment, who also supported the abortion ban that went on LB 574 and supported the ban on trans healthcare, are massive hypocrites. Massive, massive hypocrites. What if at 22 the driver is pregnant? Should we then require her to wear a helmet to protect the preborn baby? Should we require pregnant women to wear helmets, or if they don't want to wear a helmet, should we require them to watch a video of a pregnant woman in a motorcycle crash so they can be adequately informed about their choice before they do that? You guys are massive, massive hypocrites. We let people under 19 drive motorcycles. Should we start requiring parental consent for that? I believe in government staying out of people's own medical choices. This is, to me, is not a helmet bill, it's a halo bill. If you want to go meet your maker, then don't wear a helmet. I ride a Vespa, and my son rides it with me a lot, and we wear helmets every single time, and it's still dangerous, even just riding in the city, and we know that. But you're all massive hypocrites, and you should be embarrassed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Lowe, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I stand in support of AM 1975. Back when I was in college, a year before I graduated, a friend talked me into buying a motorcycle, and we were going to leave Kearney and go right up and down the West Coast. We thought that sounded like a good time. So I bought my motorcycle, and the next day he sold his. I started out by myself that way, got stuck in a blizzard out in Colorado, got stuck for a week out there. And I came back after a week and a half and sold my motorcycle. Shortly after that, I figured out a convertible is a much better way to travel with four wheels underneath me and a top and a heater. It also kept the rain off me. But I'm standing here in support of this because as a motorcycle rider at one time, I would have to leave the state to go ride without my helmet. And what happens if I have an accident outside the state and my brain is damaged, as it has been said here? Do I stay in Wyoming or Missouri, North Dakota, Iowa? No, I come home. You would come home and you would get the care here. So it doesn't matter that we have a helmet here, helmet law here. If you get brain damage because you're riding outside the state, you still come back to Nebraska and you still get treated here in Nebraska. The state of South Dakota doesn't pick that up. The state of Iowa doesn't pick that up. It still is the state of Nebraska. And we lose our freedoms. I carried this bill my freshman year. And we came one vote shy. One member of the legislature was called into court that day. At this time, we would have been riding motorcycles for almost 6 years. We would have had better data by now on whether or not this works. I believe this works well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Senator Merman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am in support of AM 1975, I guess it is. Don't have my glasses on, sorry. I have had two serious motorcycle wrecks in my life. I guess the first one was the last day of high school. Several of us seniors rode out of school on motorcycles. Fortunately, we were all wearing helmets. We had dirt bikes at that time. Went to Hastings. The Brickyard Park there at that time was a big hole in the ground, and where they mined the clay for the bricks, I guess, and went down into that hole and came back out. And I thought when I rode back up out of the deep hole, I thought it was flat ground on the other side, just like where we went in. Well, it was flat ground for about 10 feet and then straight down on the other side again. So, of course, I went right over that cliff, and I wasn't wearing a helmet at that time. Ended up, the motorcycle was above me, and I think my helmet was the first thing that hit the rock or dirt, and had a big gash in the helmet. So that helmet may have saved my life, or at least serious injury at that time. So thankful for that. The other time I was about 40 years old, and it's about the last time I rode a motorcycle. Riding back from the farm into town where I lived at the time, just a couple miles. It was getting dark and just going along about 60 mile an hour. Next thing I knew, there was a deer right in front of me, so I broadsided that deer. Ended up flipping down the highway. But that time I wasn't wearing a helmet, and I guess I was just lucky. But I do think it's a matter of personal freedom. I, just like Senator DeBoer, I highly recommend wearing a helmet. Like I said, after that happened, the motorcycle was parked in the shed. My son, 20-some years later, asked me, or 20 or so, asked me if he could get that bike out. It's a little bit bent up, if he could try and straighten it out and ride it. And I told him I'd rather you wouldn't do that. So he didn't. Fortunately, he did listen to his dad at that time. So I do highly recommend, if you're riding a motorcycle, wear a helmet. Just like Senator Brandt said, farming, we often don't wear helmets, especially on four-wheelers. So I do think it's a matter of personal freedom, and I do support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Senator Hansen, you're recognized to close on your motion to return to select.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I would just keep it pretty short and sweet, and I encourage my colleagues to vote green on AM 1975 and to return to select file, and then for the underlying amendment, and then for the underlying bill as well, LB 138. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Members, the question is the motion to return to select file. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed, nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
30 yeas, 5 nays on adoption of the motion, Mr. President.
The motion is adopted. Senator Hansen, you're recognized to open on your amendment. And waived. See no one in the queue. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 175, 1975. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
30 yeas, 5 nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The motion is adopted. Senator Ballard, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 138 be re-advanced to ENR for re-engrossing.
Member, there's been a request for a machine vote on the motion to re-advance LB 138 to ENR engrossing. Mr. Clerk. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, 4 nays to advance the bill, Mr. President.
The bill is advanced. Mr. Clerk, for the next item.
Mr. President, next item, engrossed legislative bill 227. Senator Vargas would move to return to select file for a specific amendment, that being AM. Excuse me, Mr. President, apologies. There's a priority motion. Senator Hunt would move to recommit the bill. It's my understanding Senator Kavanaugh is authorized to open on that motion.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll withdraw the motion.
It is withdrawn. Mr. Clerk.
In that case, Mr. President, Senator Vargas would move to return Legislative Bill 227 to select file for AM 1989.
Senator Vargas, you're recognized to open.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Thank you, colleagues. I'll be brief, and I know when we get to the amendment, I'll talk about this a little bit more. This amendment, 1989, is my priority bill, which is LB 570. LB 570 also includes LB 75 and LB 419. LB 419, Senator Wishart's bill, extending the postpartum coverage care, and LB 75, updating maternal and child health. And I'll talk a little bit about these very briefly, and I know we'll get into them a little bit more. All three of these independent bills came out of HHS committee on a 7-0 vote, unanimous, and were packaged together in a committee amendment. Quickly, LB 570 would adopt the Overdose Fatality Review Teams Act. It creates a regulatory framework for establishing county-level multidisciplinary teams in Nebraska to collect data related to opioid overdose deaths in Nebraska. Through LB 570, these teams can bring together a variety of representatives in the healthcare sector. This is going to make sure that communities can identify missed opportunities. There's no clear mechanism for it right now in statute. No counties are required to do this. This is creating a framework for them to be able to do it and make sure that we are protecting privacy protections in place. I want to thank the committee again for their work and their 7-0 vote on that bill. And also making sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the privacy. And thank you on that. On LB 75 is a maternal and child death review teams update. It is expanding the maternal and child death review team's ability to make sure that they are reducing severe maternal morbidity. These are preventable things that we can actually identify. Under our state statute, we need to make sure that we have coverage for liability. This is another bill that was voted out 7-0 from HHS. And it's a bill that we've been working on with maternal and child health for years with the committee. And I want to thank them again for this. And LB 419 was introduced by Senator Wishart. Previous things worked on from Senator Michaela Cavanaugh in the past that would expand Medicaid coverage for postpartum women for 60 days to at least 6 months. The original bill had it till 12 months. But what's happening here, and I think what we've heard, is there's a need to continue to make sure that we're supporting the entire family unit, women, children, and their long-term health. And I want to thank all the people that have co-sponsored Senator Wishart's bill. It has, I think, all the co-sponsors of the female members on the floor and 20 plus additional members of the legislature as a commitment to maternal and child health. I want to thank again Chairman Hansen for supporting this package and all the members that voted on this and making sure we're doing everything we possibly can to support maternal and child health through this package. And that's what we're going to be moving to return to select. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator Hansen, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am in support of AM 1989 from Senator Vargas and the entirety of it and everything that he has on there, and also Senator Wishart. I think a lot of this comes from when I've listened to constituents in my district anyway. One of the underlying themes I hear from them is whether they are pro-life or whether they are pro-choice, is what are we doing to help take care of those who are having babies in the state of Nebraska? And I think this is a big step forward to address that concern. And so I am in favor of this. I know a lot of my colleagues are as well. So I encourage everybody to vote green on AM 1989 and then also for LB 227, my committee HHS bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Seeing no one else in the queue, and you just closed. Members, the question is the motion to return to... Senator Vargas waives the closing. Members, the question is the motion to return to select file. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
45 ayes, no nays on adoption of the motion.
The motion is adopted. Senator Vargas to open on AM 1989.
Thank you very much. Again, I'll be brief. This is a committee package, committee amendment to my priority bill, LB 570. I want to thank Chairman Hansen and all the members of the committee for voting this unanimously out. There are 3 bills within this LB 75 that focuses on allowing maternal and child death review teams the ability to conduct reviews on instances of severe maternal morbidity. The reason why this is important is make sure that we can continue to have the statutory regulations in place so that these review teams can do what they're necessarily in statutory able to do, guaranteeing them the liability protections for privacy and records so that we can continue to realize what are we seeing at a state level and a local level in terms of maternal and child deaths and morbidities. LB 419, as I mentioned earlier, was Senator Wishart's bill and something that was worked on previously by Senator Michaela Cavanaugh that would expand Medicaid coverage for postpartum women from 60 days to at least 6 months. The previous bill was for 12 months or 1 year, and we cut it down to 6 months in collaboration and conversations with Senator Chairman Hansen and the committee. This is making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to support mothers, their whole entire families, and the little ones. And this is something that we have worked on in these recent couple of days. But I want to particularly thank all those senators that have worked on this in the past several years, getting it to this point, and again, the leadership of the chair. And then simultaneously, the last bill, which is LB 570, which is working on establishing a regulatory framework for the opioid review teams at the county level, which does not require any counties, but allows them the ability to create these teams. This is a good package that focuses on maternal and child health. And we absolutely need to do everything we possibly can in a pragmatic and fair way to do so. Thank you very much. I urge your adoption of Amendment 1989. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Seeing no one else in the queue, you are recognized to close and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1989. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
42 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Senator Ballard, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 227 be re-advanced to ENR for re-engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion to re-advance LB 227 to ENR engrossing. It's a debatable motion. Senator Wayne, you're recognized to speak. And waived. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed to advancement, say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, next bill. I have, first of all, a motion from Senator Michaela Cavanaugh to recommit that she wishes to withdraw.
It is withdrawn.
In that case, Mr. President, Senator Slama has AM 1767 with a note she wishes to withdraw.
It is withdrawn.
Mr. President, Senator Slama would move to return Legislative Bill 92 to select file for a specific amendment, that being AM 1984.
Senator Slama, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, colleagues. This is a very simple technical amendment. The day that LB 92 came up on select file, Senator McDonald and I got our wires crossed with who was going to drop the amendment that cleaned up fiscal's concerns with the bills with regards to his CHIPS portion of the bill. So this simply includes that very quick cleanup language requested by fiscal that eliminates the general fund impact in the short term for his bill. It also cleans up technical language change on LB 68 that since we had the chance to return the bill to select file, we cleaned up. But I'd ask for your green vote on this and green vote on the amendment itself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Slama, you're waiving your closing. Members, the question is the motion to return LB 92 to select file. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 ayes, no nays on the motion to return, Mr. President.
It is returned. Senator Slama, you're recognized to open and waive on AM 1984. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1984. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
42 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Senator Ballard, you have a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 92 be re-advanced to ENR for re-engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion to re-advance LB 92 to ENR engrossing. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, next bill, select file. There are no ENR amendments. Senator Slama would move to amend with AM 1929.
Senator Slama, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment to the A bill is provided by fiscal, reflecting the changes that we just adopted to LB 92, therefore eliminating the fiscal impact that raised some questions on the first round of debate because we actually passed the technical cleanup that fiscal requested that we do. So I'd ask for your green vote on this amendment to the A bill so that the A bill accurately reflects what LB 92 is going to cost. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Seeing no one else in the queue, you're recognized in waive closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1929. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 92A be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion to re-advance LB 92 to ENR engrossing. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. It is advanced. Speaker Arch, you're recognized for an announcement.
My understanding is that we'll be receiving the governor's vetoes here shortly, and so that we can read those across before we adjourn for this evening, we're going to stand at ease for 10, 15 minutes, something like that. So at this point, we'll just stand at ease and just for the purpose of receiving the vetoes so that they can be read across. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, communication from the governor. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of the legislature. With this letter, I'm returning Legislative Bill 814E and 818E with my signature, but with line item reductions. Our economy is incredibly strong, as evidenced by the over-collection of tax receipts compared to the funds necessary to provide essential services to our citizens. Hardworking taxpayers in Nebraska are demanding that their money be returned. The legislature is on the verge of passing a transformative tax relief measures that will lower the burden of income, business, property, and Social Security taxes. We must continue to fight against excessive governmental spending to deliver dollars back into the pockets of Nebraskans. Delivering transformational tax relief has not stopped us from ensuring that no kid is given up on. The Education Future Fund is established with $1 billion in fiscal year 23-24 and $250 million every year thereafter to finance public K-12 education. This will increase education aid by nearly 30% annually to ensure the state is adequately financing public education while driving down the reliance on property tax dollars. We will ensure that every student has at least $1,500 in foundation aid, while also guaranteeing that our special education students are funded with state resources. To balance our budget, I have line item vetoed Medicaid reimbursement rates to provide for a 3% increase in fiscal year 23-24, while holding rates flat in fiscal year 24-25. This will reduce funding by $15.3 million in general funds and $29.9 million in federal funds for fiscal year 24-25. Hospitals have seen record profits preceding and throughout the pandemic, but rising costs have begun to eat into those margins. Funding for reimbursement rates will not address any of the systematic workforce shortages and will provide only a Band-Aid to hospitals' bottom line without providing any relief for healthcare costs paid by everyday Nebraskans. Healthcare institutions must adapt by developing a sustainable healthcare model that addresses both near and future challenges. I have also vetoed a child welfare rate increase of $6 million in general funds in fiscal year 24-25 related to the replacement of one-time federal funding for the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. Replacement of temporary federal funding with permanent state funding is a practice that will severely harm the state financially. The department is currently conducting a rate study as part of Legislative Bill 1173 to better inform reimbursement rate decisions and potentially revisit this budget program in the mid-biennium process to address possible rate adjustments. I have also reduced $900,000 in general funds in fiscal year 23-25, 23-24, and 24-25 related to the expansion of home visitation care that would boost the existing program from $1.1 million to $2 million a year. Currently, the Department of Health and Human Services is utilizing temporary assistance for needy families funds to provide for this care and will continue to address needs with this fund source. Additionally, I vetoed additional funding for a Cedars housing facility of $1 million in general funds in fiscal year 23-24 intended for housing pregnant and parenting homeless youth. Financing operations of this facility is a TANF eligible expense and will be handled administratively instead of utilizing general fund tax dollars. My veto includes a general fund reduction of $250,000 in each year the biennium related to the expansion of court-appointed special advocates aid. Without this reduction, the program grows from $500,000 to $750,000 each year, or a 50% increase. I have also line item reduced $2.2 million in general funds in fiscal year 24-25 for the Legislative Council related to the 15% legislative salary increases. The continuing trend of underutilizing appropriation demonstrates there is more than enough resources to accommodate these increases. Additionally, I vetoed a total of $309,461 in general funds in fiscal year 23-24 and $539,242 in fiscal year 24-25 related to the new state auditor positions and salary increases. The auditor has existing resources to cover necessary positions and pending salary increases to fulfill the office's constitutional duty. I have also vetoed $470,164 general funds in fiscal year 23-24 and fiscal year 24-25 for the Nebraska Historical Society. Over the last 4 years, the agency has underspent general funds by an average of $900,000. My veto will right-size the agency's funding without impacting their day-to-day operations. Additionally, I have line item vetoed $107,252 in general fund appropriations in fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 for a position within the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission to fund a full-time sign language interpreter that is not necessary based on current workload. I have line item vetoed $950,000 in general fund appropriations in fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 for an additional funding to the Supreme Court, including $500,000 per year to assume additional ex officio clerk services and costs on behalf of county district courts, $200,000 per year to increase funding for court interpreters, and $250,000 per year for additional public guardianship services. The Supreme Court has enough funding to manage potential increases in demand for these services. I have vetoed $300,000 in general fund appropriation increases in fiscal year 23-24 and fiscal year 24-25 for interstate water litigation within the Attorney General's office. Existing funding is sufficient to meet the state's needs for this purpose. Additionally, requested trial preparation coordinator position was a lower priority for the Attorney General, and I have vetoed general fund appropriations by $102,917 in fiscal year 23-24 and $107,840 in fiscal year 24-25. I have line item vetoed the $7 million general fund appropriation in 23-24 to the Department of Environment and Energy for providers grant assistance for a rural drinking water project in Cedar/Knox County. This project has already seen sufficient investment from the state, which is utilizing ARPA and drinking water state revolving fund funding, which exceeds $332 million. To preserve our cash fund, I have vetoed $10 million in cash fund appropriations in fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 for the rural workforce housing, and $10 million cash fund appropriation in fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 for middle income housing. This will preserve our reserve funds and avoid flooding the housing market with government subsidization. We have invested more than $200 million in affordable housing over the past 3 years, and Nebraska housing developers are busy leveraging this substantial investment to build up our supply of affordable housing in the state of Nebraska. I'm reducing the additional shovel-ready Capital Recovery and Investment Act funds from $90 million to $70 million in fiscal year 23-24, and eliminating funding of $10 million related to the site and building development funding to Kimball for a ground-based nuclear deterrence project. I stand behind Kimball in securing funding from the federal government to ensure this area can continue to thrive in the future, and we will continue to assist that effort in any way possible. I'm also vetoing the $5 million appropriation from the Nebraska Healthcare Cash Fund, fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25, and the related intended transfers in the following 3 years from the Cash Reserve Fund for the pilot program related to gun violence. Over $500 million has already been devoted to economic recovery over the last 2 years, focused mainly in North and South Omaha. Investing in our core mission of providing quality services to the citizens of Nebraska while delivering transformational tax relief is a must. We must cut government spending, we must cut government red tape, and we must lead the charge in investing in our next generation. Over 4 years, my veto reductions will save the general fund $94.2 million, healthcare cash fund $10 million, and the cash reserve fund $87 million. This session has the makings of being truly transformational, and I'm writing to you to stand up to the special interests who stand to gain from growing government spending and deliver the money back to hardworking Nebraskans. I urge you to sustain these votes. Sincerely, Jim Pillen, Governor. Additional items, Mr. President. Amendments to be printed from Senator Hansen to LB 227A. Senator Wisher would add her name to LB 570. The Appropriations Committee will meet in room 1307 at 8:00 a.m. tomorrow morning. Finally, Mr. President, a priority motion. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh moved to adjourn the body until Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 9:00 a.m.
Senators, you've heard the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.